It is day 240 of the second Trump administration. Today, Utah prosecutors filed charges against 22-year-old Tyler Robinson. That is the man accused of killing Charlie Kirk. Those charges included aggravated murder, and prosecutors say they will ask for a death sentence in the case. We'll have much more on that coming up in a few minutes. Also today, FBI Director Kash Patel testified in front of Congress where he faced very tough questioning about the Kirk shooting investigation, the Epstein files, as well as his overall handling of the Bureau. NBC's Ryan Nobles has the details.
Tonight, FBI Director Kash Patel grilled by Democrats.
I follow you on your social media posts that tear this country apart.
To address your falsehoods.
Criticizing Patel for initially announcing, then taking back news a suspect was caught in the Charlie Kirk shooting investigation.
So that was a mistake.
I don't see it as a mistake. I see it as something working with the public to identify that there was a subject
So if you
in custody.
But Patel touting the FBI's record.
This FBI is delivering the results we are delivering to include the lowest murder rate in modern U.S. history.
And also making headlines on the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein.
Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals.
Democrat Adam Schiff arguing the administration has not been transparent about why Epstein co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell was moved to a lower security prison.
You want the American people to believe that? Do you think they're stupid?
No. I think the American people believe the truth, that I'm not in the weeds on the everyday movements of inmates. You are the biggest fraud to ever sit in the United States Senate. But all you care about is a child sex predator that was prosecuted by a prior administration, and the Obama Justice Department and the Biden Justice Department did squat.
With that, let's bring in our leadoff panel, Michael Chanel, MSNBC congressional reporter, Jeff Mason, White House correspondent for Reuters, and David Drucker, senior writer at The Dispatch. Woo, wow, those were fireworks. I mean, Michael, lots of very fiery testimony. There was a lot of back and forth. It was unlike anything I've ever seen, actually, from any person coming before an oversight committee. Kash Patel is going to be back on Capitol Hill tomorrow. He's actually appearing before the House Judiciary Committee. What is your reporting telling you about what to expect there?
Well, if we saw fireworks with the Senate Judiciary Committee, I think we can expect even more of a show to be before the House Judiciary Committee. There are a number of high-profile members on this panel who like to use these committee meetings as opportunities to make made-for-TV moments. People like Jared Moskowitz, Jasmine Crockett, Dan Goldman, people who are good at these hearings. There's also a key Republican on the House Judiciary Committee, Thomas Massie. He has been the most vocal Republican pushing for the release of these Epstein files. As we saw during today's Senate Judiciary Committee, the Epstein files was a key part that Kash Patel was pressed on. So I suspect that tomorrow is also going to bring its fair share of news, not just on Epstein, but also on the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And as we saw today, those firings of some FBI officials.
I have to imagine Thomas Massie has some thoughts about what we heard from the FBI director today on the Epstein files. Jeff, look, at this hour, and let me just check my phone, okay? At this hour, the White House is still publicly backing Patel. But what are you hearing behind the scenes?
Well, I think that's actually the key thing, is that the president is behind Kash Patel. But I also think it's really important to note to viewers and to discuss the fact that it's not just Democrats who have been critical of Kash Patel. It's also conservatives. It's also members of President Trump's MAGA base. But so far, that has not trickled up to the president himself. That applies to Pam Bondi as well, which I know we're going to talk about it, later. And that's key. It's the president's support that matters. But it's not welcome. It's not welcome to have, for this White House, to have the criticism of two very loyal Trump lieutenants to be getting criticism both from the base itself and also from other lawmakers.
Yeah, look, I don't think anybody here is questioning if Kash Patel is loyal to the president. And so I think that's part of the reason when he's still there, David. But, you know, the chatter that I have heard about town is that the new co-deputy director of the FBI, Andrew Bailey, who up until he was sworn in was, in fact, the attorney general of Missouri, that he could be giving Kash Patel a run for his money if, in fact, it comes down to it and the president ends up thinking, OK, maybe I need to do something about Kash Patel. What are you hearing?
Well, I mean, I've had sources tell me that he was brought in a sense, to layer at least the deputy director, Dan Bongino. I think what's different about Kash Patel is that he's a political operator and an FBI director. And even though anyone who rises to the level of FBI director knows how to play politics, they don't play the role of political actor at a hearing like this. I mean, they may get exasperated. Lawmakers can be grandstanders. They're not really asking questions. They're giving speeches. So, I mean, they're hardly beyond reproach. But usually what you'll get from an FBI director is a sort of cool rebuke and sticking to the facts and let's talk afterwards. And I can't talk about that here, but I can talk about that privately. And Kash Patel was performing for the President of the United States, who, if he watched this, walked away, if he had any doubts about Kash Patel, and is now feeling much better about him. Because how do you continue to hold Donald Trump's confidence? You fight like he would fight. And I have no doubt that that's the result of today's hearings, and no doubt Kash Patel will do himself a world of good with the president if Democratic and other lawmakers oblige him by interrogating him rather aggressively, giving him a chance to fight back equally aggressively.
I mean, you know, we will see. It remains to be seen. I was aghast is the word I'm going to use by today's testimony.
It's fair to note that no cabinet member, no person at that official is ever completely safe in President Trump's world.
Well,
so that's got to be a sort of a threat that's hanging over even Kash Patel and everyone else. But I think you're spot on, David. I mean, I think he was performing not just for the lawmakers today, but for his boss. And I think his boss will have liked what he saw.
It's an audience of one for everybody who works for President Trump.
Well, speaking of which, Pam Bondi, she is getting some heat for some comments that she made yesterday about speech. And again, I think after you watch this clip, you would also say that she was performing for an audience of one. Take a listen.
There's free speech and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people so we show them that some action is better than no action?
We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle.
Well, today, Pam Bondi tried to walk those comments back, saying she was only talking about violent threats. But, Michael, this sparked some real right-wing pushback against Pam Bondi. I mean, conservatives reminded Pam Bondi that even hate speech is protected by the First Amendment. How is all this going over with the Republican elected officials?
Yeah, and not great. Look, a key tenet of conservatism is the belief of free speech. Even Charlie Kirk himself, back in 2024, had said that violent speech may be wrong, but it's allowed by the First Amendment. The First Amendment protects everything that is said, and America should remain free. So this is sort of going against the ethos of what Republicans and the Conservative Party believes in. Speaker Johnson responded to these comments today during a press conference, saying that, that this violent rhetoric is protected by the First Amendment and by the tenet and the ideal of free speech. So I think it's a curious comment for Pam Bondi to be making, and certainly one that has been pushed back by a number of Republicans and prominent people in the conservative circle.
Well, Jeff, the president kind of echoed what Pam Bondi said today when he was on the White House lawn before his departure. And it just feels to me like we're seeing a weaponization of the whole concept of free speech. And I am shocked to see many folks on the right that are, urging folks to call people's employers. That's usually something a tactic I know from my progressive friends, and particularly calling people's employers who are posting about Charlie Kirk. What would it look like if the Department of Justice actually decided to crack down on free speech?
Well, a couple things. Number one, politically, Michael's spot on in saying that conservatives were concerned about this because they have for a long time fought for the right for not just broad free speech principles that we talk about and think about in terms of freedom of the press, but also freedom of religion, the ability for a baker to say, no, I'm not going to bake this wedding cake for a gay couple. That's something that conservatives fought for. And so now all of a sudden they're hearing their attorney general say we're going to come after people people for hate speech. That's not something that they want to hear. What will it look like if the Justice Department comes down? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that people on both sides of the aisle support free speech, and it's also, I mean, it's so critical to who we are as a country, and that doesn't mean every bit of speech is something that you want to hear, that is pleasant, or that is something that seems right, but it is protected. And that's the key. I'm
reminded that the ACLU, they defended the folks who organized the the rally in Charlottesville. They defended them in court. And the ACLU noted it's not because we agree with what they are saying, but we will rigorously defend their ability to say it. And that's what makes us American. You know, at least one governor weighed in on this today, David, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. Take a listen.
I think it is dangerous if the government is now going to become the thought police or the speech police. I think we need freedom of speech in this country to be protected. It is a foundational principle of this great nation. It doesn't mean that we have to agree with the speech. Certainly, if speech is being used to incite violence, that crosses a line. That's not okay. But just sanctioning someone because you disagree with what they said, that's wrong. It's un-American.
David, your thoughts?
Well, I expect to hear more of this from elected officials and people involved in politics. We saw today some of the president's biggest supporters criticize Attorney General Pam Bondi, even though the president himself did not. You know, I think what's important to remember here, number one, is that a lot of people who knew Charlie Kirk, who were involved in Republican politics, even if they didn't know him, are grieving. And so you're going to see some people thinking out loud and talking about what can we do to prevent this? What can we do to punish the people that we think were responsible for this? Cooler heads should eventually prevail. But what's important to understand about our Constitution is that it protects us from the government monitoring and sanctioning us and preventing us from speaking our mind, however vile and uncalled for it is. It doesn't protect us from employers. It doesn't protect us from institutions that are not interested in sanctioning and platforming us, right? I mean, I work for the Dispatch. I can't just write and say anything I want and keep my job.
Same here, okay.
Right, and it's not unconstitutional for the Dispatch to have standards, but the government doesn't get to standardize us and doesn't get to tell us what to say. And I think, you know, what Governor Shapiro was saying was important, but I think people, if it's important to people, they're going to have to continue to speak out and point that out. And not just assume that our First Amendment rights are going to protect us just because they exist.